Penguin Random House author, and I've worked with nearly 1,000 writers in my 18 years as a memoir writing coach. One of the things I hear most often is, "Wendy, I'm terrible at dialogue." My response is always the same. You know what? You're probably not. In this video, I'm going to explain why your dialogue isn't working and why it probably has nothing to do with your dialogue. Yes, you actually did hear that right. Not only that, I'm going to prove it to you. So let's get into this. Let's talk about bad dialogue. Come on, you've read it before. I'm sure there's someone in your writing group who writes good prose until they start writing dialogue. This person begins reading their scene out loud, and everyone takes a deep breath and tries to hide their cringe face. This is my I'm not cringing face. So, let me give you an example of the kind of writing that I'm talking about. This is a portion of a scene that was submitted to me by a writer that I worked with years ago. "I think we should see other people," Henry said. "What?" I responded in shock. "I just think it's for the best." "Are you serious right now?" I asked angrily. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I can't believe this." I felt tears in my eyes. Not so great, right? Did you hide your cringe face? Now, take a second and try and figure out what it is that's not working. What lines of dialogue would you change? Okay, so did you spot the sucky lines of dialogue? Well, I'm guessing you struggled with this. This is a cringy scene, yet all of the dialogue is working. So how is that possible? Well, for just a minute or two, I want to talk to you about why even the best writing advice in the world has not yet solved the problem you're having with your dialogue. Let me help you understand this with a story. During World War II, the United States had a huge problem. Lots of their airplanes were being shot down, and so they decided what they could do to reinforce their planes, making them more likely to survive an air attack. So they studied the bullet holes found on returning planes and realized that there was a pattern. These planes had most of the bullet holes on the wings and the tail. So what did the US military do? It added armor to these sections, but the overall rate of surviving planes didn't change. This hadn't solved the problem. Well, why not? The logic behind the study was flawed. The researchers were looking at the patterns behind the surviving planes of those that came back. So these were the planes that had been able to withstand the damage to their wings and tails and were still able to fly. The planes that hadn't survived were the planes that had been shot in the engine. In fact, it was the engine, not the wings and tail, that needed reinforcing armor. So, why am I telling you this? Well, the same thing might be happening with your dialogue. You're looking at the dialogue as the source of the problem, but the problem isn't the dialogue. The problem isn't even the writing that you're doing. The problem is the writing that isn't yet on the page. The problem is what you're missing. So let me do a quick rewrite of this. Okay, so here is my rewrite. "I think we should see other people," Marcus said. We were at our favorite booth, the one in the back corner of Gino's. Oh wait, I think I changed his name. Oh well, he's Marcus now, not Henry. The rest of this is the same. This was supposed to be a celebration. 7 years together. I'd even said yes to Italian, in spite of the fact that it made my acid reflux act up. "What?" I asked, still processing what Marcus had just said. My brain was still on the menu. Lasagna or chicken carbonara? Which one would I regret the least in the morning? "I just think it's for the best." "Are you serious right now?" Had he honestly just said we should see other people? I wasn't sure whether to take him seriously, mostly because he had a stupid grin on his face. Then again, he always laughed at the wrong times, like when my sister broke her ankle at the bowling alley. He was a nervous laugher, a nervous smiler too. I've been thinking about this for a while. Can't believe this. Well, actually I could. He wasn't just a nervous laugher. He was terrible at making decisions. I knew it must have taken him months to plan this. In fact, I was sure there was a folder devoted to this breakup on his computer, complete with pro-con lists and a couple of Excel files, not to mention a flow chart filled with if-then statements in case the conversation didn't pan out the way he expected. So, do you feel the difference there, other than changing from Marcus to Henry, Henry to Marcus? I worked with the exact lines of dialogue as written to prove to you that dialogue wasn't the problem. The problem was the lack of narration following the dialogue. What was missing was the writing that came after the dialogue. So let's talk about why so many people make this mistake. I think part of the problem is that people write their books thinking that dialogue works in a book the same way that it does in a movie. In a movie, most of the script is dialogue. Dialogue does a ton of heavy lifting. We get information through dialogue, we get emotion through dialogue. However, in a book, dialogue is just not enough for a reader to understand what is really going on in a scene. I'm going to explain why this is the case in just a sec. Before I do, be sure to check out my upcoming live class by checking out the link in the description. I would love to meet you personally and help you figure out the problems that you're having with your memoir. Check out the link in the description. So, why is dialogue just not enough when it comes to writing a book? So let me give you an example to help you understand the point that I'm trying to get across. So let's say there's a line in a movie script. Let's take something super simple. How about, how are you? So as an actor, I can interpret this line in multiple ways. How are you? How are you? How are you? Okay. So we have 3 different interpretations of the phrase, how are you? Now, in a book, I can't hear an actor's intonation. So if you write, how are you? In a book, I don't really know what the character's intention is when they say something. But so many writers think that dialogue is enough. In reality, dialogue in and of itself adds very little to a scene. What is far more important is the narration that comes after the lines of dialogue. Unlike in a movie, where dialogue is used to tell the story, in a book, in a novel, in a memoir, dialogue is just the spice. It's like the salt and pepper of your story. What you need to tell your story is narration. Let me help you understand exactly what needs to go after a line of dialogue. So to do this, I'm going to use a short excerpt from Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls from David Sedaris. Now, after I read this to you, we're going to talk about the 3 important things that should go in your narration following a line of dialogue. Here's the excerpt. It was winter, and I was in New York, killing time before a movie. Week-old snow lay smoldering along the curbs, and I was just noticing all the trash in it when I heard a man yell, "Citizens arrest!" I guess I knew that such a thing existed, but you never hear of anyone taking advantage of it. So I assumed it was a joke, a candid camera type of thing, or maybe a student making a movie. "Citizens arrest!" the man repeated. He was standing in front of a grocery store called Fairway on Broadway and 74th. The man had a puffy down jacket on, and as I moved closer, I saw that he was touching the shoulder of a teenage boy, not gripping him, so much as tagging him, claiming him. "Citizens arrest! Citizens arrest!" I wondered what crime had been committed, and judging from the people around me, many of whom had stopped or at least slowed down, I wasn't alone. Something silver had dropped to the ground, and just as I saw that it was a magic marker, a couple ran out of the store. The boy's parents, I assumed, for they raced right to his side. "Citizens arrest!" the man repeated. He was graffitiing the mailbox. I expected the parents to say, "He was what?" But rather than scolding their guilty-looking son, they turned on the guy who had caught him. "Who gave you the right to touch our child?" "But the mailbox," the man explained. "I saw him." "I don't care what he was doing," the woman said. "You have no right touching my son." She made it sound like a sexual thing, like he'd had his hand up the boy's ass, rather than resting, weightless, on his shoulder. Okay, so what are the techniques that Sedaris is using here? The 3 techniques that you too should be using in your book when it comes to dialogue. Number 1, let us know what the narrator thinks about what they just heard. So someone says something and your narrator processes this. You're putting the narrator's thoughts in your narration. Okay, where does Sedaris do this? Citizen's arrest. I guess I knew that such a thing existed, but you never hear of anyone taking advantage of it, so I assumed it was a joke, a candid camera type of thing, or maybe a student making a movie. So there Sedaris tells us what he thinks after he hears the dialogue, citizen's arrest. He puts us inside his head. Later, Sedaris does this again, letting us know what he thinks when he hears the same phrase again. Citizen's arrest, citizen's arrest. I wondered what crime had been committed, and judging from the people around me, many of whom had stopped or at least slowed down, I wasn't alone. Okay, tip number 2. Let us know what a character actually means. So let me give you an example of this. Citizen's arrest, the man repeated. I saw that he was touching the shoulder of a teenage boy, not gripping him, so much as tagging him, claiming him. So what does this character mean when he says citizen's arrest? What is this man actually trying to say? Well, it's not a joke to him. He wants this boy to be taken away by the cops. He was gripping the shoulder of the teenage boy, tagging him, claiming him. Okay, we get another example of Sedaris letting us know what a character actually means here. I don't care what he was doing, the woman said. You have no right touching my son. She made it sound like a sexual thing, like he'd had his hand up the boy's ass rather than resting, weightless, on his shoulder. Remember, we can't hear dialogue in a book in the same way that we can in a movie. So a line of dialogue just isn't enough for us to understand what a character really means. That is the job of your narration. So this also goes for your narrator. We can't hear tone when you say something either. So something else that belongs in your narration is this. Let us know what your narrator actually means. So I did this in my rewrite at the first example. I will read this to you again. Are you serious right now? I honestly wasn't sure I believed him, mostly because he had a stupid grin on his face. Then I remembered that he always laughed at the wrong times, like when my sister broke her ankle at the bowling alley. He was a nervous laugher, a nervous smiler too. Remember, your reader cannot hear tone, so you need to interpret most of the lines of dialogue, helping your reader understand not what is said, but what is actually going on. So, we've talked about the importance of narration in bringing your dialogue to life. However, a lot of people still get this wrong. They think, oh, dialogue is not enough, so I will show what my character is doing, or I will show their reaction. But this actually doesn't work very well in a book. I'll read something like, he raised his eyebrows in response, or her face turned red. Now, the problem with this is that you can raise your eyebrows for lots of reasons. Your face can turn red for lots of reasons. I'll say this to someone and then they will come back with something like this. He raised his eyebrows in shock. Her face turned red in anger. Yeah, okay. So what is the problem with these examples? Well, I see what is happening in the scene, I guess, but I don't really feel it. This is really surface level writing. Instead of showing me a character's reaction, it is so much richer and emotionally affecting for you to interpret them, for you to use your narration to help me really understand that moment. Telling me what you were thinking, or what a character actually meant when they said something, is so much richer than you describing what they were doing at the time. Honestly, I actually hate most gestures in scenes. He glared at me. He scowled at me. She gave me an angry frown. I just think that's cheap writing. When I tell my clients that their reader can't hear tone, some of them try and solve this problem by describing a character's tone. So they will write things like, she said in a stern, mean voice, or he said angrily, Martin said in frustration. But this really has the same problem as using gestures and facial expressions. So I might hear what a character is saying, but I just don't feel it. Bigger problem is that what people say and what they mean are two different things. For instance, when I say to my husband, "Honey, do you know where my glasses are?" He knows that what I really mean is, you need to stop everything you're doing right now and help me find my glasses. Now, this is not something that a reader would understand if I just added, "Wendy said," in a threatening tone. Besides, I asked my husband where my glasses are in a very sweet tone. That's just the way I am. Want to learn more about why good writing advice can actually make your book worse? Check out this video next.